Welcome to the Good Ride, where we try for you so you don't have to. I'm James Beastie, your exceptionally average rider, here to help you learn about the Bataleon Beyond medals. I rode this with Union Force, Bataleon Astro bindings, Bataleon Acid Boa boots, and Ride Deadbolt boots. I got this at the end of the season, but I lucked into a little bit of wet, thick powder, some good varied spring conditions, and really got to see what this board could do. I also compared this against the United Shapes Cadet. As you can see, they have a lot of similarities just by shape, setback inserts, and overall ride. So a lot of times I brought out the Cadet to compare. This is a 58 and that's a 59. So when it comes to sizing, this 59 worked pretty well for me. I'd be curious to try the 56 and see what that's all about, because it has a narrower stance width that matches my personal stance width a little bit better than this. I could use the setback inserts better with the 56. So let's talk snowboard dating app, some things that'll make you want to swipe right. This has exceptional pop. It's very forgiving. This has setback inserts so you can get easier directional float on deep powder days. And this is very forgiving for having this much camber. Some things that'll make you want to swipe left. The edge hold is quite limited and challenging in hard snow. This is primarily for center weighted riders only. If you front foot or back foot weight your turns, you probably won't like this. It also is very bucky in soft, uneven snow, and that can be unsettling in trees or tight spots. And I just want to take a moment to talk about my sponsor. It's the brand that's helping us bring honest and objective content to you. That's Blower Board Shop. They do their best to match pricing just as well as the big stores do. They have a strong online presence. They do their best to match pricing like the big stores do. They have fast shipping. They've been selling snowboard gear longer than some resorts have been allowing snowboarders on the hill. So if you're in the United States, give them some love. When it comes to shape, the Beyond Metals is very directional, but it has no taper. In comparison to the Cadet, that has a little taper, but not much, and doesn't feel very tapered either. This has a very centered feel for how directional it looks. It has their TBT profile, which has a pretty aggressive lift in the sides here that runs down well into the effective edge from both sides. As you can see, almost none of the board touches the snow when it's unweighted. When you weight down, there's a little more contact. I will say though that it's incredibly forgiving. Really easy to skid a turn if you get off your game. It has almost that continuous rocker forgiveness. It tracks a lot better than continuous rocker. That being said, it's not like a lot of hybrid camber boards, like getting off this and getting on the Cadet. That was much more stable one footing and flat basing. But this is very good for how lifted the sides are, especially if you try to keep the weight between the feet. Now, speaking of all this lifted tech and edge hold, it's very challenging to get this board to grip in hard to icy snow. Even doing my best to engage my feet and really twist this board and bend this edge in and really press down between the feet, didn't get this to grip as well as I would like. Same day runs with the Cadet, which isn't a super amazing gripper. It's just competent in hard snow. That could hold an edge and even carve, where this, I was barely getting down the hill. So if you see a lot of hard snow, stay away from Bataleon. None of their boards really work there that well in comparison to a lot of other boards out there. Let's talk about the flex of the Beyond Metals. You can see it's got a medium flex. It feels maybe even a touch softer than the Goliath Plus. You can see down in the tail, it's pretty stiff, but there's a little give, and it was easier to butter than I thought it would be. In the nose, it's not that super soft compared to the rest of the flex of the board. You can see it breaks more in this area than between the feet but just has a really good pop. It's got a lot of camber. It's got a poppy energy to it. It has a touch of that rubbery flex like you get with the Goliath, but in a little stiffer package and in a little more directional shape. I gotta say, I was really impressed with the TBT technology in the way this section here allowed me to butter without it washing out. There are a lot of spoon noses recently that I've tried that just are too continuous here, so you can't get purchase when you're buttering. It doesn't hold and you wash out a lot. Same in the tail. There's a nice flat section there to allow you to butter. And when it comes to ollie power, this is exceptional. Bataleon just makes a really poppy board, and all of the Bataleons this year were the poppiest boards I've tried. They just launch. They just send you higher than you think you're gonna go. It's a little surprising at first, but overall it makes you look better than you are. That's always a valuable feature for average riders like myself. Now, when it comes to uneven snow, while it doesn't grip that well in hard snow, it handles hard, uneven snow well without that chatter, that crankiness that passes up into your joints and really fatigues you. The problem is what gives this such amazing pop and such easy ollie power also makes it want to get air when you don't want to get air. So you hit a bunch of bumpy, thick, uneven snow, it wants to launch up in the air and go over it that way, as opposed to holding its edge and powering through the turn. This always bucked me out of my line. On same day rides with like the Cadet and other non-Bataleon boards that had less camber, a little more dampness, they would go through that chunder no problem. Then I'd get on this and it would just buck me out of my line. So this would be kind of sketchy if I was in a tight tree line in moderate to pretty uneven snow. I wouldn't feel confident there. Every time I got in the trees, I slowed way down because I didn't want to get bucked out of my line and hit a tree. So when it comes to speed, this has a pretty balanced turning radius that allows you to go straight. I'd just be careful of going fast and straight in uneven snow. The base glide's pretty good. Didn't blow my mind, but it's far from being a slacker. When well waxed, it keeps its speed very well and has upper tier glide. And when it's dry, like at the end of the test, it does pretty well too. It's not gonna totally shit the bed and get that sticky. I would prefer a black base though, they're the easiest to repair, and no die cut, please. Now, when it comes to turning and carving, this requires a particular type of riding style, the way you weight your turns, and I'm going to talk about that first before I get into anything else. It likes that weight right between the feet. You need to really transfer perfectly center weighted on this board to get this to turn properly. You can go instructor style and bring your knees way out, and it works really well with this kind of board. It gives you more purchase for edge hold and for turning. You can't back foot weight out of a turn, so you center weight and then lean into the back foot. And you can't lean too far forward on your front foot to power through a turn. It engages too much of this TBT and it starts to feel edgeless and washy. So if you like center weighted turns, this transitions quickly edge to edge. It did very well for my size 9 boots. I could turn this medium fast, bordering on fast. Again, like I said, in uneven snow, I don't feel comfortable with this in a tight tree line if the snow's uneven, but if it's clean, perfect powder, it would turn through the trees really well. And when you get this on edge and start turning, this just about 8 meter side cut radius does a very good job at doing a little bit of everything. I think it feels a touch more turny than you would think for kind of that middle of the road 8 meter side cut. And it could across the groomer carve very well. Pretty good on a circle carve, not super amazing, but very good. And medium radius turns were very fun. Down the line turns were doable. Those narrow S turn kind of carves where you're really building up speed. I thought this did a pretty good job there too. But what I really liked about this board in good conditions is how well it popped you out of the turn. There's just such a dynamic feel with all this camber from tip to tail without it being technical and unforgiving. I will say though that with my Cadet on same runs, even though I didn't get this kind of pop out of the turn, I like that the Cadet could handle different ways you weight your turn, and it was a little more damp and it carved better in all conditions. But this definitely won the spring out of the turn game for sure. Now, when it comes to powder and directional float, first off, I love these setback inserts. I will say one thing though, I chose to ride my Union Force instead of the Bataleon Astro or Atoms when I was in powder, because these have a hybrid mini disc that works with setback inserts, but you can't slide them this way and you can't slide them this way. My Force have a full-size disc with lots of channel here, so they can slide a lot this way. They also have a lot of adjustability, so I can center them. And with the 59, it's a 22.75 inch stance width, which is 1.25 inches too wide for me. So what I wanted to do is put my Force here, slide it all the way back, put my Force here, slide it all the way forward, and get closer to my stance width. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better. That way I could utilize these full-size discs and get easier directional float. And speaking of that, like I said before, with a 2.75 inch stance width on these setback inserts, you can get 3.25 inches back from center of board versus setback on side cut. And in comparison to, let's say, the Cadet, you're looking at 5.5 inches back from center of board. It's way more back towards the tail. You're here instead of here. And while that doesn't give you as good of landing gear when it's just puking and it's waist deep, the Cadet's going to do so much better in powder, especially with that extra bed of early rise, a little longer nose, and a little shorter tail. And it's at a 22-inch stance width, so it's more doable for most riders because most people are at around 21 to 22 inches in stance width that are going to fit this kind of board. But this floated pretty well for being so centered on board. I found that this long TBT, this lifted tech that goes all the way down into the board, really countered all this camber and didn't make this just a full-on nose-diving cartwheeler that it could be if this was just traditional camber with none of the TBT there. It also has a very cool, smooth turning experience that rolls easier edge to edge. I still felt I needed to be center weighted. Usually I ride a lot more back foot weighted in powder to get a little more surfy because I come from a surfing background. But this one I felt more comfortable riding more centered, and I didn't feel the nose diving. Despite this board's directional look, you can ride this switch very well for what it is. That's a common trait with all Bataleon boards. So overall, other than the lack of edge hold, the limited way it turns, and its bucky nature in soft, uneven snow, this pop is unparalleled in its peer group. For example, in my comparison against the United Shapes Cadet, this felt like twice as poppy, and the Cadet's a poppy board, but it just wasn't as damp and didn't grip as well and didn't have as much directional float. That being said, this is a very fun board to ride and turn. If you're looking to get air off of everything, you see a lot of good conditions, and you like that cool, fluid turning experience in powder, this could be a good fit.